ನನ್ನ ಮುದ್ದಿನ ಮಕ್ಕಳೇ, ಹೆಂಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ? ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಓಕೆ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್, I am Dr. Smita Narayan Karthik and here with a new chapter and a very important chapter, right? You know what are the chapter what we are going to discuss here today is, that is Organisms and Population. Yes students, ಇದು ನೀವು ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಇದೆ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ಬಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಏನು ಗೊತ್ತಾ, ತುಂಬ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಇದೆ. ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ರಿವಿಷನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಸ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೆನಪಿರಬೇಕು. ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇದೇ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್. ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಎ ಸೆಡ್ ಚಾಪ್ಟರ್ ತುಂಬ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಇದೆ. ಮೆನಿ ಜನರಲ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ, ಲೈಕ್ ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ಲೈಕ್ ಈಕೋಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೀವು ಲೋವರ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ ಇದು ಸಮ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್. ಸೊ ಸೇಮ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ಸ್ ನಾನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಡೀಟೇಲಾಗಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ us now start with some of the MCQs of this chapter, that is organisms and population. And we are going to take the first question from organisms and its environment. Let's take the first question here. Okay, an association of individuals of different species living in the same habitat and having functional interaction is. Now if you see the question, the very important part to be noted here is association of individuals, right? Interaction of individual, or you can say association of the individual of different species and then more than human species, right? Different species living in the same habitat. So look at the options here now: ecological niche, biotic community, ecosystem and population. So before we move on to the correct answer, let me now tell you something called hierarchy, ecological hierarchy. Idu yenide ecological hierarchy? Let us discuss that now. See, now every hierarchy will have some base structure, right? So this is what forming the base of the hierarchy, and we are going to form, example, the base of the hierarchy, that is individual. That means individual organism. Andre now illi example kodbodu, humans, correct? Humans are of the same species, interacting, interbreeding amongst themselves to produce fertile offspring, right? So individual now of the same species will together form something called as population. Many individuals come together to form something called as what the next hierarchy, that is called as what the population. When you move on to the population in an entire environment, you know, different populations would be there. For example, human population, right? Then the cat population, then the dog population. Idella more type population example now helidivi, correct alla? So more type population, bere population. So there are how many populations can you count? Humans, that is 1, cat 2 and dog 3. So 3 different populations, right? 3 different populations comes together to form something called as community. Now community andre, it's a group of different populations, correct? Different populations, right? But in the community you can give examples like the animal community, right? So you will have something called as animal community, then the plant community, and then the microbial community. Plant and the microbial, that is a microorganisms, microbial community, correct? So these 3 communities together are completely living. So we give them a term called as biotic community. What is it called as? Biotic community. Biotic andre living, correct? Living, that's why I call as what the biotic community. So how many communities are there? 3, that is animal community, plant community and microbial community. Together forms biotic community. Now let us move on to the next level of the hierarchy. Idu all biotic community interaction ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ with the environment, correct ಅಲ್ಲ? ಅವರಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಬೇಕು. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ನಾವು ಏನು ಎಕ್ಸೆಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ? ಕಾರ್ಬನ್ ಡೈಆಕ್ಸೈಡ್. ಸೊ ವಿ ಬ್ರೀತ್ ಇನ್ ಆಕ್ಸಿಜನ್, ವಿ ಗಿವ್ ಔಟ್ ಕಾರ್ಬನ್ ಡೈಆಕ್ಸೈಡ್. ಇದು ಕಾರ್ಬನ್ ಡೈಆಕ್ಸೈಡ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ? ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದು ಕಾರ್ಬನ್ ಡೈಆಕ್ಸೈಡ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಯೂಮ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಫೋಟೋಸಿಂಥಸಿಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ನಮಗೆ ಏನು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಫುಡ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಮತ್ತು ಆಕ್ಸಿಜನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಅದು ಆಕ್ಸಿಜನ್ ವಾಪಸ್ ನಾವೇ ಇನ್ಹೇಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಹೌ ಯು ಆರ್ ಇಂಟರಾಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ದ ಲಿವಿಂಗ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ, ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಬಯೋಟಿಕ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ is interacting with the abiotic world, andre non-living factors. So when you interact with the non-living world, so that interaction of the living world with the non-living world gives rise to something called as what? The ecosystem, right? So that ecosystem is the interaction of the environmental factors with the biotic world. So if you see ecosystem, again there are different types of ecosystem, like you will find the water bodies like small rivers, lakes, ponds, etc. So these are small ecosystems. When these small ecosystems come together, you get something called as what? The landscape. So landscape andre enu? Small idu patches of the ecosystem. Correct? Huh? Many such landscape, big one, come together to form biome. Biome andre enu? For example, you have the tundra region, correct? You have the alpine, right? So these are some of the examples of the biomes. And many such biomes come together to form what? The biosphere. So this becomes the entire hierarchy for the ecology. And now, shall we quickly recap all these things now? So first hierarchy starts with the basic level, that is individual organism, come together to form, that is population. Many populations together come to form community, many communities different come together to form ecosystem, then many ecosystems come to form the landscape, finally many landscapes together forms the biome, and many biomes come together to form the biosphere. So here, I think you must have got a hint about the answer. So can you tell me what will be the association of individuals of different species living in the same habitat and having functional interaction will be called as what? Yes, you're very right. That is biotic community. So the answer here is option B. Gottaita? So this is what the very important hierarchy which you need to be knowing about that. Related to that, we will be asking you some MCQs also from this point, right? Okay, let us read the next question. The geometric representation of age structure is a characteristic of. What is that? And now you are familiar with all the terms, right? Options are ecosystem, landscape, population, biotic community. Let us now throw some light on this aspect, students. Do you know what is age structure? ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬಹುದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಏಜ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್. ಈ ಲೋವರ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ನೀವು ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಲ್ಲ ಏಜ್ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್. Let us throw some light on that. Okay, and here we go. Okay, students, before we go to the age structure, you know, the study of the population is basically called as demography. All the aspects like birth rate, death rate, etc. There are some concepts like, you know, natality. So natality is one such aspect which talks about the birth rate, okay, and about the number of deaths will be called as the mortality. So natality, mortality, and there is one more aspect what we are going to discuss, that is an attribute, is the age structure. So here we go. What is this basically age structure depicting? Yes, students. Now, if you see the population as such, the population will be having people of different group of ages, right? They will be of different ages. So what these people have done, okay, to simplify the study of population, that is demography, what they have done is they have divided the entire population into three major groups. And the three major groups are, first is the pre-reproductive, then is the reproductive, then is the post-reproductive. So what is that? Pre-reproductive basically will be the juvenile stage or the children era, children age we can say, juvenile phase, right? Next comes the reproductive. So here you will find the juvenile category, correct? That forms the base of the pyramid, right? Then comes the reproductive. That will be generally the adult stage, which will be having the capacity to reproduce, correct? Then comes the post-reproductive. Post-reproductive andre old age people, right? So pre-reproductive will be the juvenile, which doesn't have the capacity to reproduce. Then comes the reproductive, that is the adult stage. Then the post-reproductive, that is the old age. So if you see in all the three structures, that what we have done is we have grouped the organisms as per the age, and that groupism is being put into a pyramid. Yes, so this is something called as age structure. So you get different pyramids here. So now we can see here, in this case the first type, wherein you can see the basement is being confined to the pre-reproductive, and the second one is confined to the reproductive, and the last level is towards the post-reproductive. So in the three cases, if you can see, which is a more or broadened structure, that is the pre-reproductive. So when you see the base is been more broader, it indicates that that place or that region will be showing expanding type of the population. It can lead, if it is not controlled, it can lead to population explosion also, right? So that is the first type of the age pyramid which depicts what? Expanding type of the population. Come to the next one. You can see here that there is little bit number equal between the pre-reproductive and the post-reproductive. So that type of the entire pyramid, okay, or you can say the age grouping done in this manner will be showing a stable type of the population, right? So this will be the second type. And the third one, if you see, type which is opposite to the first type, wherein you can see very few in the category of the first level, that is the pre-reproductive stage, and very more little bit in the reproductive, and very much higher in the case of the post-reproductive. So this is a typical example of opposite of the expanding type. So if in the basement you find that the pre-reproductive stage is very low, after several years, definitely that will lead to what? A decreasing kind of the population. So that will be called as what? The declining population. So these are the three different types of the age pyramid which suggest us that that region will show this type of the population based on the number of individual of these three groups. So now we come to the question and the options. So here, as the options were ecosystem, landscape, population, biotic, community. And as we said, the representation of the age structure is basically done for the population. Right? So the answer here is going to be option C. Okay? So as I said, the population is defined as a number of individuals in a specified place, right? And basically very important to be noted that depends upon the geographical factors present in that area. And as I said, mortality and natality are some of the parameters, or you can say attributes. And this is something called as age pyramid, what we studied right now. So this is what the option C is, the age pyramid or age structure, which helps to understand the type of the population growing, declining in that particular region, right? So let us now move on to the next question, students, and here we go. So the next question is, the population of an insect species shows an explosive increase in numbers. Look at the word explosive increase, that is a very high population rate during the rainy season. So there is a rainy season which will increase the population, followed by its disappearance, matlab declining at the end of the season. What does this show? And yes, student, this is again a very important part what we are going to discuss here. Andre, during rainy season, abruptly population will rise, okay? After that, it comes down suddenly. What is that type of curve called as? So you will be studying here different types of the growth curve. So the options are S-shaped or sigmoid growth of this insect. The second option is the population of its predators increase enormously. Third is the food plants mature and die at the end of the rainy season. The last is its population growth curve is of J type. Now, before that, we need to know what is this J type growth curve. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನನಗೆ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀರಾ, ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿಸ್ ಜೆ ಟೈಪ್? ಓಕೆ, ನಾವು ಹಿಯರ್ ವಿ ಥ್ರೋ ಸಮ್ ಲೈಟ್ ಆನ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ, ಇದು y axis and x axis. In the x axis, we are showing time, right? And the y, we show the number of the individuals. So in this case, individuals, what we are representing is on this side, right? So let us now see, as a question suggested here, it was showing the group of the organisms are growing suddenly, right? So you can see a sudden increase in the population. So you can see from the point of origin, there is sudden increase in the population because the factors, or you can say the resources are unlimited. So since the resources are unlimited, definitely they will consume the resources and then they will multiply at a very faster rate, and the organisms show a very high increase of population, that is population explosion. So you can get a curve like this in such a way, suddenly when they reach at this point, there is abruptly declining population. That means what? The moment they start competing, when they realize, okay, the food resources are in ample, so they start galloping all the resources, they start multiplying in a very, very, very faster rate. In such a phase, they multiply that suddenly there is declining of the factors like the food. So the food declines and then abruptly it falls down. That declines the entire population. This type of growth curve where you find a J is called as J-shaped growth curve. That is called as what? The J-shaped growth curve, which is also called as the exponential growth curve, wherein you can see there is exponential growth, and that's why it's called as what? The exponential growth curve. Correct? Now look at another type of growth curve, which is little bit, appealing type. Once you can understand that, how is the growth pattern in a very systematic manner. So in case of humans or in case of some of the bacteria, this is a pattern which is observed, okay. What happens here is, again you have the time against the growth of the organism, and here we go. So initially you will find, and here in this case, the resources will not be unlimited. Yes, you can say that initially the resources will be there enough, and slowly let us see what happened to that resources. So the resources, when we talk about the resources, let us talk what about the status of the population. So initially when the bacteria are growing, they will of course will show something called as the lag phase. That means slowly they take more time and show less growth. Correct? So that will be called as lag phase, also called as lagging growth. matlab slowly they will grow. Slowly ಅವರು grow ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಸ್ಲೋಲಿ ಅವರು ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಕ್ಲೈಮೆಟಿಕ್ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಗೆ. ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅದು ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಬೇರೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರು ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಗ್ರೋ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಟೈಮ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಎಂಡ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಏನು? lag phase. So that initial phase wherein you can see a slow growth will be called as what? The lag phase. At this point you can see that now our you can say adjustment time ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ಇವತ್ತು ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಫುಲ್ ಅಡ್ಯಾಪ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ವೆರಿ ಸ್ಮಾರ್ಟ್ ಇನಫ್ ಟು ಕೋಪ್ ಅಪ್ ವಿತ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ. ಸೊ ನಾವ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರೈಂಗ್ ಟು ಮಲ್ಟಿಪ್ಲೈ. So now if you see here, slowly you can see there is again an increase in the population in such a way that they grow exponentially also. So meanwhile, if you see in this stage, of course there will be competition happening, but yes, the resources which was ample now starts declining. Okay, because many of the species multiply, they consume it, so the resources start declining. Slowly accordingly they will show the multiplication in such a way called as exponential phase or else the log phase. So log phase, also called as a logarithmic phase, which is again a very important part of the growth curve, which indicates that they are now well versed and slowly they will try to multiply in a very faster rate. And slowly when the factors, that is resources, start depleting, they show a little slow growth, and finally they end up with something called as stationary phase. So stationary phase andre enu, there won't be any multiplication as such, but they attain a stability. And this is what the shape what we got here is the S-shaped growth curve, which is something called as realistic, or you can say logistic growth curve. Correct? So logistic andre salpa nodadre, initially there is a slow phase, then comes little fast phase, then again they slow down. So the appearance will be the S-shaped growth curve. So if you see in both the cases, this is something called, at a stretch they will multiply at a very faster rate and then abruptly they will decline. That is not happening in the case of the S-shaped growth curve. So now look at the options here. According to you, which one do you think? The insect species what we're showing here, suddenly growing and then declining suddenly, that would be which type of growth curve? Yes, you're very right. If you see, it is not showing the S-shaped growth curve, nor even the population of its predators increases enormously, not even the food plants mature and die at the end of the season. The problem is the shown curve here is the J-shaped growth curve, because in which the density increases rapidly, showing exponential fashion, and then abruptly, as the environmental resistance or any other limiting factor, it can be resources, which becomes effective more or less suddenly. So the type of the curve what you get here is the typical J-shaped growth curve. So this was our next question. The key elements that determine differences in environmental conditions of different habitats include temperature, light, soil, and all of these. Now students, ಇದು ತುಂಬ important part of the chapter. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ we are going to discuss about some abiotic factors. Abiotic factors ಅಂದ್ರೆ let us discuss ಅದು abiotic factors ನನ್ನ ಲೈಫ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಇನ್ಫ್ಲುಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? We are encountering them every now and then, right? So let us see what are the different abiotic factors, and here it goes. So if you see, these are very key elements, okay, which controls our life indirectly, we can say like that. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಎವ್ರಿ ಡೇ ನನ್ನ ಸರೌಂಡಿಂಗ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಸ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ವೇರಿಯಸ್ ಸೀಸನ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ವೇರಿಯಸ್ ಕ್ಲೈಮೆಟಿಕ್ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇದು ಏನೇ ಇರಬಹುದು. ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಕೀ ಎಲಿಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್, ಓಕೆ, ಆರ್ ದೇರ್ ವೇರಿಯಸ್ ಟೈಪ್ಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಹಿಯರ್, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ 3 key elements which we can put here. Is first is the temperature, then the light, then the soil, and yes, I would add here one more, and that is the water. So if you see, these are the 4 important factors abiotic. Abiotic andre ಏನು? Non-living. So these environmental factors which are non-living, yes, that is the temperature, light, water and soil, play a very, very crucial role in our life's development. It can be for any organism, but these are the 4 factors which actually plays a very critical role in everyone's life. And yes, as I said, the answer here is very simple, that is all of these, that is option D. And we will be discussing more and more about the factors, how it influences, and what are the various roles or mechanism adopted by the body. So ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಸರ್ವೈವಲ್ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಮುಂದೆ MCQsಗೆ ನೋಡಬಹುದು. Okay students, so the first question here about the abiotic factors, these were the various factors. Now let us go to the next question pertaining to the factors. Organisms restricted to a narrow range of temperature. One factor which we are putting here, and there are certain organisms which we can group them in various categories. The options are stenothermal, eurythermal, biothermal and geothermal. If you see from all the 4 options, idu actually connected illa. Okay, geothermal andre the energy derived from the earth's crust, okay, and biothermal is a renewable source of energy, right? So we can strike off these 2 options here. So what are the 2 main options are the stenothermal and eurythermal. Now there are certain group of organism, like there are 2 types of organism. One type of organism would be the eurythermal. Okay, eurythermal andre those group which can tolerate or survive in the broad range of temperature, correct? So if you see, eurythermal are such type of organism which can, survive very well, of course, with some mechanism involved in them, and they can survive in different temperatures also. That is what called as what? Eurythermal. Stenothermal andre ಏನು? They are not able to adjust so easily with the change in the temperatures. ಅಂದರೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸೇಮ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಬೇಕಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ. ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಲೇಬೇಕು ಫಾರ್ ದೇರ್ ಸರ್ವೈವಲ್. ಸೊ ದೋಸ್ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ವಿಚ್ ಆರ್ ರೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ಟೆಡ್ to narrow range of temperatures will be called as what? Stenothermal. So here the answer would be stenothermal. Got this thing clear? So I told you these are the 2 important aspects. Stenothermal andre which cannot tolerate wide ranges of temperature, they need only certain group of temperatures, within that only they can survive. And eurythermal andre ಏನು? Opposite of this, they can tolerate wide range of the temperatures. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹಿಂಟ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ what is the difference in the 2 type. So this was with respect to temperature. Now we take a question with respect to the salinity. Okay, andre in the previous question we had discussed the factor that was the temperature. This question nalli nanu water how acts as a factor, let us discuss ಮಾಡುವ. andre water as one of the very important abiotic factor, and ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು salinity ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬಹುದು ನಿಮಗೆ. salinity ಅಂದರೆ the amount of salt present in the water. ಸೊ ಎರಡು ಟೈಪ್ ಇದು ವಾಟರ್ ಬಾಡೀಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಫ್ರೆಶ್ ವಾಟರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಸಲೈನ್ ವಾಟರ್, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ದ salinity you have 2 type of water body, fresh water and sea water, right? Now in the case of the salinity, there will be difference in the salinity with respect to fresh as well as the sea water. The amount of the salinity present in the fresh water will be less, around 5%, and that is with respect to the sea will be 30 to 35%. So let us see now how this water, that is the factor water, plays a very important role in the living organism's life. And moreover, very much concerned is about the fishes, because there are two different type of fishes. You know, you must have heard fresh water body fish ಮತ್ತು marine fish. ಎರಡು ಟೂ ಟೈಪ್ ಫಿಶ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಸೊ ಆವಾಗ ಅವರಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಡಿಫ್ರೆನ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಸ್ಯಾಲಿನಿಟಿ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ. ಸೊ ಅದು ನಾನು ನೋಡಬೇಕು ಇದು ಕ್ವೆಶನ್ ಇಂದ. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಹಿಯರ್? ಆನಿಮಲ್ಸ್ ದಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಟಾಲರೇಟ್ ಅ ವೈಡ್ ರೇಂಜ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಯಾಲಿನಿಟಿ ಆರ್, ದ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ anadromous, stenohaline, cathodromous and euryhaline. Now in this option, if you see, A and C are something talking about the migration of the fishes. For example, it is found that during the spawning season, it is found anadromous fishes will try to migrate from sea to the fresh water. Correct? And cathodromous will go reverse way from fresh water to the sea. So this is a migration act shown by the fishes when the spawning season actually appears, right? So now let us see what is stenohaline and euryhaline. So when we talk about the haline, haline stands for the salinity. Okay, haline stands for the salinity. As I said, this salinity varies from water bodies to water body, right? So there are two types of fishes here again found. Those fishes, euryhaline means those fishes which can tolerate wide range of the salinity. That means they can go to different water body and then they can adjust the salinity. That fishes will be called as what? Euryhaline. Correct? ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? In the previous session ನಾನು eurythermal word ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ. Same way euryhaline ಅಂದ್ರೆ organism or the fishes, okay, which can tolerate the wide range of the changes in the salinity. Stenohaline andre ಏನು? Which cannot tolerate. Okay, which cannot tolerate the wide range of salinity. ಅವರಿಗೆ same type of the salinity ಬೇಕಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ. So that fishes will be called as what is stenohaline. So here the question, animals that can tolerate wide range of the salinity would be answer, that is option D. Okay, so this was a very important question. And now the question is, okay, given figure represents the different zones of a lake or a pond. Very important to be marked here is the different zone, student. Andre, how this light matters a lot in the water body. That is what we will be discussing here. Okay, so ನೀವು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಲೈಟ್ ಎಲ್ಲವರಿಗೆ ಲೈಫ್ಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲುಯೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ದಿ ಆ್ಯನಿಮಲ್ಸ್, ರೈಟ್? ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತು ನಿಮಗೆ ಲೈಟ್ ಈಸ್ ರಿಕ್ವೈರ್ಡ್ ಫಾರ್ ಫೋಟೋಸಿಂಥಸಿಸ್. Similarly, even the water body is also require light. And how the light influences their life, let us talk about that now. So there are different zones being produced when the light is been ejected, or you can say light is been projecting to the water body. And the different zones are labeled here as X, Y and the Z. Let us now go to the options. X constitutes shallow water banks and is called as littoral zone. Students, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ mark ಮಾಡಿ ಇದು wordsಗೆ, littoral zone. That is what it is telling. X represents the littoral zone. Then Y presents the open water zone up to which light can penetrate and is called as profundal. So this will be that point, that is the Y region, which is called as a profundal zone. And Z constitutes the deep water zone where light cannot penetrate and it is called as limnatic zone. So here they are talking as what? The limnatic zone, right? Let us now talk about the concept. Before we understand the MCQ and the answer, we need to discuss the different levels of the water body. And here we go. So look at this, student. Now here is how the water body is being presented to you, and there is sunlight which is going to penetrate the various levels of the water. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇದು ರೀಜನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಇದು ಟೆರೆಸ್ಟ್ರಿಯಲ್ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್. ವಾಟರ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಯು ಸಿ ಹಿಯರ್ ದ ವಾಟರ್ ಬಾಡಿ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಹಿಯರ್. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ದ ಕೋಸ್ಟಲ್ region. Correct? Coastal region, right? And here you can see the light actually directly falls in such a way that the plants are so happy that they got enough amount of the light. So you can get a good level of producers, that is the plant which produces food by photosynthesis. Producers in this zone. This zone will be called as littoral zone, where the light penetration will be really very nice, and here the plants can successfully produce the food by photosynthesis, that is encaptured by the producers. Correct? Go to the next one. Of course, you will find many submerged plants, or you can say the floating plants, etc. Go to the next region, that is the limnatic zone. So what you can see in the limnatic zone is, you can find that it's an open water body. Correct? You will find some cells, plant, or you can say phytoplanktons. Okay? So you will find the phytoplanktons as well as the zooplanktons. So what happens in the open water body is, light penetration will be found, and yes, even as you go down, right, you will find the light penetration as well as the oxygen will be decreasing as you go down towards the benthic region, lower region, right? So initially you will find this is the upper layer of the water body, that is upper layer of the limnatic zone, where you can get the direct light, okay, will be called as euphotic zone. Okay, so euphotic zone andre ಏನು? Sufficient light ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, slowly as you go down, the intensity of the light decreases, and here if you ಇಲ್ಲಿ notice ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಇದು region ನಲ್ಲಿ direct sunlight ಬರುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಂಟೆನ್ಸಿಟಿ ಸ್ಟ್ರಾಂಗ್ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗ್ತದೆ. ಸೊ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಝೋನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಡಿಸ್ಫೋಟಿಕ್ ಝೋನ್. ಓಕೆ, ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ವಾಟ್? ದಿ ಡಿಸ್ಫೋಟಿಕ್ ಝೋನ್. ಸ್ಲೋಲಿ ಡೌನ್ ಯು ಗೋ ಡೌನ್, ನಿಮಗೆ ಒನ್ ಮೋರ್ ಝೋನ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗಬಹುದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ? ಡಾರ್ಕ್ ರೀಜನ್, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಏಫೋಟಿಕ್. That is called as what? The aphotic zone. Also, that is nothing but the profundal zone, right? And here you actually get the benthic region. Benthic region andre dark region where there is actually no light present. It is basically forming the sedimental surface, that is the benthic region, and moreover you will find consumers more in this region. You will find more of the consumers, producers won't be there, because as I said, light penetration ali agudilla, it is a dark zone. Okay, so this is the general idea about how is a water body being influenced by light as a factor. So let us quickly recap now. As I said, you will find something called as littoral zone, so where you find these group of the plants doing a good amount of the photosynthesis. Producers will be inhabiting in that zone, that is basically comprising your coastal belt. Slowly you move on to the main open water body, wherein you find three zones, that is euphotic, where the direct sunlight will be penetrating the water body. Then comes the dysphotic, where little light less will be there, intensity will be little lower. And then comes the aphotic. Aphotic andre alli complete dark irutte, which is also called as the profundal, which later forms, that is in benthic region, wherein majority of the organism what will be found is the consumers. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ, as you move down, light ಮತ್ತು oxygen decrease ಆಗುತ್ತಾ ಇರುತ್ತದೆ. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? So that is how you can see light factor plays a very crucial role in the organism's life. So students, here we come back to the MCQ, and the question here is, as I said, mark the labeling here, X, Y and Z, and the options: X constitutes the littoral zone, Y comprises of the profundal, and then the Z, the limnatic. As you know very well, nimge gottide alla, what is the zone which we are actually looking out for? That is littoral. Option is correct, since that comprises of the shallow water banks, and the answer here is A. And here I give you one homework, and it is a very simple question. Try ಮಾಡಿ ಇದು. Benthic organisms are affected most by benthic andre yavdu region? The deepest region, right? Yes students. So the options are surface turbulence of water, water holding capacity of soil, sediment characteristics of aquatic ecosystems, and light reaching the forest floor. And I give you the question for homework. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ time answer ನನಗೆ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು ನೀನು. Okay students, I give a small break for you all here. So now let us move on to the next question, and it is about the next abiotic factor, and this is the question: pedology is a science of, and the options are diseases, earth, pollution and the soil. Student, we had discussed so many factors, that was temperature, light and water. And the fourth important factor, as I tell you the answer here, is the soil. Soil factors also play a very critical role when it comes with respect to plants. Yes, students, plants are supposed to be dependent on the soil for the various factors like water and the minerals. And yes, what matters is the composition of the soil. So there are various parameters when we talk about the soil, like the properties of the soil, like the chemical composition of the soil, the different layers of the soil, the water holding capacity of the soil, and etc. So we will be talking about the various horizons present or the layers present in the soil in our regular sessions of the entrance level students. So here basically the pedology is a science dealing with the study of the soil. And those factors which are related to soil are called as edaphic factors. Okay. Yeah, students. Now it is time for us to throw a light on the responses shown towards the abiotic factors. Andre yenu? See students, every time, every day, ನಿಮಗೆ ಸೇಮ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕುತ್ತೆ, ಅದು ಏನು ಗ್ಯಾರಂಟಿ ಕೊಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ. ಅಂದರೆ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳುವ. ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಎವ್ರಿ ಟೈಮ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಹೈ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಆರ್ ಇಲ್ಸ್ ಲೋ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಏನು ನಾವು ಪ್ರೆಡಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಅಂದರೆ ಇದು ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ನಾವೇನು ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಡೆಫಿನೆಟ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ನಮ್ಮ ಲೈಫ್ ಟೈಮ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೇ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸಮ್ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಅದು ಹೈ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಲೋ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಎಕ್ಸೆಟ್ರಾ ಲೈಕ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಆಸ್ ಎ ಸೆಡ್. ಸೊ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಯು ಥಿಂಕ್ ಸೊ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ ಕೋಪ್ ಅಪ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ತುಂಬ ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಎವ್ರಿ ಡೇ ಸೇಮ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಸೇಮ್ ಪ್ರಪೋರ್ಷನ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಏನು ಫಿಕ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಪ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಡೌನ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಎವ್ರಿ ನಾವ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದೆನ್. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು ನಾವು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಹೆಂಗೆ ಕೋಪ್ ಅಪ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅದು ಡಿಫಿಕಲ್ಟ್ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್ಗೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ಟಾಪಿಕ್ ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾ? ಸೊ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಟಾಕ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಿ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಸ್ ಟುವರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ದಿ abiotic factors. Now let us say the first type what we are going to learn, yes, with respect to one graphical presentation, and here we go. So you have one question with respect to the changes of the abiotic factors. Okay, so given graph represents the response of organism, that is what I said, response of organism to various abiotic factor. So as I said, I give a hint, the factors will change every now and then. So your body, what is the priority of your body? To maintain a steady state. That is what the tricky part here. And the body has to learn how to cope up with the stressful conditions in the surroundings, right? So let us now see what are the factors here. So what are the various responses shown to the factors? On the basis, select the correct option for 1, 2 and 3. So 1, 2 and 3 ಏನು ನೋಡುವ. Okay. So here there is something called as conformers, regulators and partial regulators. So these are the options, and these are the different options related to conformers, regulators and partial regulators. So we need to know before that what is regulator, what is conformer, what is partial regulator. Now I give you one example of what is regulator or conformer meaning. I give an example. Temperature ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ನಿಮಗೆ ಸೇಮ್ ಬರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಸರೌಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ರೈಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಇದು AC ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ತುಂಬ ಚಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಎನ್ವೈರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ತುಂಬ ಕೋಲ್ಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಒಂದು ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಕೋಲ್ಡ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಆವಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಬಾಡಿ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಓನ್ಲಿ 37 ಡಿಗ್ರಿ, ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ? ಸಡನ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಲೋ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ, ಡೆಟ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಕೋಲ್ಡ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಇದ್ದರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮದು ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ಸಡನ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಾಡಿ ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ, ಸ್ಲೋಲಿ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ಗೆ ಅಡ್ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂದರೆ ನೋಡಿ, ವೆನ್ ದ ಟೆಂಪ್ರೇಚರ್ ಈಸ್ ಕೂಲಿಂಗ್ ಡೌನ್ ಎಟ್ ಯುವರ್ ಸರೌಂಡಿಂಗ್, your body starts shivering. Shivering andre ಏನು? It's a form of exercise. It burns the calories, which gives you heat energy, and that heat will allow your body to maintain the steady state. That is what we are going to learn here with some words called as regulators, conformers and partial regulators. Now regulators andre ಏನು? As I said, regulators example temperature ನೋಡುವ. Okay, so as the temperature is increasing, for example, okay, your body, so this is something called internal environment, okay, your body will not allow to get affected, but still it will try to maintain a steady state, and that's why you'll be called as regulators. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಇನ್ ಸ್ಪೈಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟರ್ನಲ್ ಎನ್ವೈರನ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ ವಿಲ್ ಚೇಂಜ್, ಬಟ್ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ದ ಬಾಡಿ ವಿಲ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಮೇಂಟೈನ್ ಅ ಸ್ಟೆಬಿಲಿಟಿ. ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಸಮ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ಸ್. ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್? ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ದ ಮ್ಯಾಮಲ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸೇ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಆಫ್ ಸಮ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಲೈಕ್ ಬರ್ಡ್ಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ, ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಎಸ್, ನಾಟ್ ಆಲ್ ದ invertebrates. There are some lower invertebrates which can't become the regulators. So let us see now in the option there are different ways how to cope up with the stressful condition. So one stressful condition ge option ಏನು ಸಿಕ್ತು ನಿಮಗೆ? Group of organism which can adjust or cope up with the stressful condition, and that was called as the regulators, right? Now there is another group, right? What is that another group? For example, look at this now. So there will be another group, especially the plants, okay, which as long as the temperature is increasing, you know, the body will sense the temperature, and of course their body temperature will also rise, and they cannot cope up with that, and that's why that group which cannot cope up with the surrounding change in the climatic factor, that will be called as the conformers. Correct? So that is the second group of organism which will be the opposite of regulators, which cannot change, or you can say which cannot cope up with the stress given by the environment, and ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ನಾವು? conformers. Especially 99% of the organism comes under this category of the conformers. Okay, next ಏನು ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡುವ? partial regulator. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ವರ್ಡ್ ಇದ್ದರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಪಾರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ, ಲಿಟಲ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಲಿಟಲ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ ಹಂಗೆ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಆರ್ಗನಿಸಮ್ ಏನಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರು ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಕೋಪ್ ಅಪ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅಡ್ವರ್ಸ್ ಕಂಡೀಷನ್ಗೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರ ಹತ್ರ ಆಗುದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರು ಪಾರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಡೆಫಿನೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಪಾರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ಸ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಟು ಒನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಕೋಪ್ ಅಪ್ ಬಟ್ ಲೇಟರ್ ದೇ ಕ್ಯಾನಾಟ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ಸ್ ವೈ ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಪಾರ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ಸ್. ಅಂದರೆ ಹಾಫ್ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಓಕೆ, so these are the three different type, and I could give you with that example. And now we come to the MCQ and the options here. So if you see to the option, as you can make out which is the correct option for 1, 2 and 3, and here if you see, this was point 1, that is a conformer. The point number 1 was a conformer, then point number 2 was a regulator, yeah, which could cope up with the stressful condition, and point number 3, that was a partial regulators. Students, there are different ways also, like as I said, the first one I go to that once again here as option here, this A, I go to that. For example, the first one was the regulator. So if the organism want to cope up, they who are capable of coping up with the stressful condition, that will be regulators. Like as I said, sweating or shivering was a form of the mechanism adopted by our body, that is thermoregulation, an example, right? That was coming under the category of the regulator, thermoregulation. Okay, there is one more type, that was what the conformers. Conformers andre avrige adjustment madlikke barudilla. There are another group, okay, of organism, like for example, which we use the word migration will be shown by them. For example, you know, there might be some birds, okay, which cannot tolerate the very cold temperature in their region. So they will try to migrate to hotter places and will try to avoid that stressful period. I mean, you can say the word, that unfavorable period will be overcome by them. So during that short period, they will show migration. Correct? So once the favorable period is coming back to their place, they will again go back to their original place. So migration will help them to save their life, and yes, for temporary period they can escape that difficult period, right? So that will be the process called as migration. There are some more examples, like, you know, which will be called as suspend. Okay, suspend andre ಏನು? For example, the best example I can give here is the seeds. Okay, imagine soil nalli ಒಂದು seed ಇದೆ. Okay, and now right now it is summer season. Summer season ಅಂದ್ರೆ rain ಬರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೀಡ್ ಏನು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಅದು ಸೀಡ್ ಥಿಂಕ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಓಕೆ ನಮಗೆ ರೈನ್ಫಾಲ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕುದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಟೈಮ್ಗೆ ನಾನು ಜರ್ಮಿನೇಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಸತ್ತು ಹೋಗಿರ್ತೀನಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಆಪ್ಷನ್, ಸೀಡ್ ಒಂದು ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೀಡ್ ವಿಲ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಗೋ ಸಮಥಿಂಗ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ರರಿ ಸಸ್ಪೆನ್ಷನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಡಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸಿ. ಡಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಟೆಂಪ್ರರಿ ಸಸ್ಪೆನ್ಷನ್. ಸೊ ಆ ಟೈಮ್ಗೆ ಅದು ಸೀಡ್ ಜರ್ಮಿನೇಟ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಅದು ವೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತದೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ ದ ಮಂತ್ ಆಫ್ ಜೂನ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ರೈನ್ಫಾಲ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕುತ್ತೆ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿಸ್ ರೈನ್ಫಾಲ್ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಜರ್ಮಿನೇಟಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ ಡಾರ್ಮೆನ್ಸಿ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಒನ್ ಟೈಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ which the plants will show, that is through the seeds, to overcome the unfavorable period. So here were the different ways of escaping the abiotic, or you can say ways to escape the stressful condition. Correct? Huh? So this was what the various types. So here we discussed about the very important concept of conformers, regulators and partial regulators. So students, now we move on to our next question.